Hello, it's Rafael Gutierrez. Thank you for watching our channel. I am the author of Serious and the Rarest Things and Off the Rails. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about, well, actually three different things, which probably will join into one later. And that is this. A lot of times people look at something and they don't necessarily look at the pathway, but all they look at all they look at is what they think is a finished product. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this. I today had actually a great experience. I have a student who I've started teaching when he was 4 years old. He's now 15, 16. And as I'm going to be taking a week off, I asked him if he could fill in for me teaching my karate classes. Uh, he agreed, and when I gave him the keys, I actually was filled with pride for a lot of reasons. This is a young boy who, uh, when I first met him, he didn't speak English. He actually told me that himself. And he has persevered to do a lot of different things. At present, he's actually at a high school here in San Diego, which is considered one of the best. Uh, they actually, from what I understand, their last 2 years they start taking classes at university. It's a public school, and it's a program that people try to get in. He actually was able to get in. Uh, throughout his life, he's actually been someone you could be proud of as a student, for his parents as a kid, and you actually see how he went from a young boy to a really mature young man who already is actually doing things to set himself on the right path for where he wants to go. Now, a lot of times I actually do talk to him, and I talk to him about really advanced stuff. We talk about philosophy, about biology, about anatomy, physiology, body injuries. We talk about business and a lot of different things, and he tends to grasp these concepts pretty well. He tends to work them out on it for himself, and then finds out where and what he really needs to do. And sometimes he asks me, "Well, what's the right answer?" And I tend to tell him it's like, "Well, the right answer is up to you." And so it was kind of interesting for me. I actually saw this young man start as a little boy and go through a path. And his path was taking him to a certain thing. And now I'm actually feel like I'm actually handing not just a key to get into the dojo, but pretty much handing down a legacy where he is going to eventually have his own students and teach martial arts as probably, hopefully, a hobby, and will have something he enjoys on the side that he does his work with. And it actually got me thinking of a lot of the other things that I've seen today. And one of them had to do with a article that was in a magazine that talked about traveling through Amtrak across the U.S. And the gist of it was it took too long and uh, was more expensive than if you would have just taken a plane. And when I read that, I thought, wow, this guy really thought things through. The reason is this. Taking a train in the U.S. will take longer, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I want you to think of a trip, the off the rails trip. I started here in San Diego. I got to see the train station in San Diego, which is beautiful. I went to LA and I saw the train station in LA, Union Station. If you haven't been there and you live in LA, go and see what's there. Look at how beautiful it is. It's actually used for movies as high-end banks, as ballrooms. It's actually in the old Art Deco architecture inside. And there's a little area you can get drinks if you're into that. There's a couple restaurants. It's a nice area. And not just the trains, but the cities and area, everything that I went in. Sure, I was actually going to visit my brother in Oakland, and I could have just jumped on a plane in San Diego and gone to Oakland, but I would have missed all the little stops along the way. This young man, he could have decided, well, you know what, I'm going to buy a black belt, put it on, that's it. But he would have missed all the stops along the way, and I would have missed being able to hand him the key and tell him, hey, I hope you enjoy teaching for me for a couple of days. But like I said, a lot of people don't understand the path. They think that, well, the destination is the only thing that matters. Everything else, well, why? I can jump on a plane and do this. You think about it. Why are you going to work for a black belt when you can just go to a martial arts store and buy a black belt, or go to a low-end martial arts studio that's going to give it to you quick? I know that someone was mentioning how sometimes parents ask, well, how long is it going to take my kid to get a black belt? And the answer really should be, well, do you want them to get a black belt, or do you want them to understand the path for mastery? And that's actually one of the big things with most martial arts. You're not trying to get the rank, you're trying to get mastery. That actually led to another thing that I actually ended up coming into, and that is people online usually talk about one martial art versus the other. A lot of them want to badmouth one or another. And I got to be honest with me. At one point when I didn't understand martial arts, I would have been one of those people. I would have thought, oh, the best martial art is this one because that's what I'm doing. And look, I can take a punch and I can do this and I can do that and I can learn to throw. And slowly, as I got more and more mature in martial arts, I started realizing that the idea of one martial art being superior doesn't really work. Each one has a reason to be. For instance, you have someone who does wrestling. Wrestling is a great martial art. It is a martial art. And if someone who loves wrestling, that's going to be something great for them. But you have some people who don't like to be touched. Well, if you're a person who doesn't like to be touched, that's probably not the best martial art for you. There are other martial arts where you might have limited contact. What I mean touch is, when you're actually chest to chest with someone, that's sometimes a little uncomfortable for some people. If you are that, grappling isn't probably going to be the best one for you. Something which keeps people at bay is probably going to be better. But like I said, it doesn't mean that wrestling doesn't have anything to offer. Quite the contrary, it has a lot to offer. If you're a boxer, boxing has a lot to offer. Now, when I see people actually badmouth one martial art or say one martial art doesn't work because a lot of times I want to say something which is, can you show me your data? And what I've noticed is very few people can show you data. The reason is most people really don't think is pretty much the end of it. Most people repeat and regurgitate what people have said before. I mean, here's actually the thing to remember. If you actually took 5 people and you put one as the best, the most educated, one as the least educated, most people would fall in the middle. Now, the people who are talking are usually not this guy. They're usually somewhere around the two ends that are at the lower end. They don't have the education. They don't take the time to see if what they're saying is reality. They say what they believe because, well, they believe it. That's, that. What higher source is there but me telling you that you should believe me? And so I usually tell people, show me your data. Now, one of the martial arts that does get insulted a lot is either, actually a lot of the traditional ones, Taekwondo, Karate. And when people say, oh, well, it doesn't work because in MMA it doesn't function, that's really not a good test. The reason is this. If you think about MMA is a sport, and people play to the sport. It's actually kind of interesting if you think about it. There are some of the original MMA people, after a while, came back, and they couldn't compete in MMA as they used to because the rules had changed, and what they were able to do before, they weren't able to do now. That's actually a big thing that shows you that, if you're playing towards a game and rules are changing, well, you can't really compare anything except for who is the best MMA fighter. Now, that's not taking anything away from anyone who trains MMA. Like I said, I actually love every martial art. But to say, well, Taekwondo doesn't work because in MMA people are winning who are not Taekwondo would be like taking a MMA fighter, putting him in a Taekwondo tournament and saying, well, MMA doesn't work because he's losing in Taekwondo. It's a different sport, a different set of rules. Things actually change. Now, some people say yes, but in the real world there are no rules, so it should. Well, if in the real world there are no rules and you can adapt, then any martial art should be able to adapt themselves to beat any other martial art in their arena. As we don't see this happen too often, there's actually a couple people in Taekwondo who I know have read about going into Muay Thai and doing amazing in there. There's some Muay Thai guys who have gone into karate or Taekwondo circuit that's done great there. But for the most part, you don't have many people who can compete and have a black belt in one or have a high rank in another and can actually go to a opposite type of martial art and win based on what they're doing. They have to actually modify a little bit. Now, when I say show me your data, I mean this. Let's take karate, one of the arts I did. Karate was pretty much around in Okinawa. It was done a certain way, and at the end of World War II, some of the American GIs decided, this martial arts from Okinawa seems pretty tough. It seems to be something that we need. We should bring it in. We should bring it into ourselves and try to find out what's going on. Actually, even before World War II, you had people like E.M. Harrison who talked about boxers of his time, boxers before World War II. One of the things that happens is, well, boxers today are probably better athletes. They're able to continue longer. They're able to punch harder. Rules have actually changed, and if you actually look at what was happening in boxing back before World War II, people died routinely in the ring. It wasn't anything that was, some of the boxers had accidentally killed 2 or 3 people, and they were still boxing. This was pretty much just part of the sport. And the thing is, E.M. Harrison, who grew up in the U.S., who had actually wrestled, had boxed, looked at karate, actually mentions karate and says that, the way it was practiced back then, a boxer of his day wouldn't have been able to compete. Now, again, that's not taking anything away from boxing. It's meaning that one of the things he found is boxers tend to use just hands, gloves, and they were trying to win based on certain rules. The old karate masters weren't trying to win with rules. They were actually using different fists to actually cause maximum damage. Their training was different for a certain reason. Now, why would it be that when boxers were dying in the ring, an author who actually did write articles on boxing, by the way, mentions karate and says, you know what, this is just a lethal art. Why would people who fought in World War II, who had actually had some of the best training of the time, look at, a lot of them had been boxers, wrestlers, looked at Okinawan karate and said, you know what, we need this. There's a reason behind that. The reason is what we see in the books. Now, has karate changed? Yes, I mean, you think about it. You have many martial arts studios, and most of them have changed compared to what they originally taught. I mean, if you take something like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, what was originally taught in Brazil is going to be modified here in the U.S. because of certain aspects, especially when people are doing grappling with certain rules. There are certain things where you might be taught one time, but as they know that you're not going to be using that, they may not train every day. And so the thing is, a lot of times, people talk, and they don't actually pay attention to the past. They say what they believe, and data doesn't really mean anything to them. Now, I would tell you to challenge me. You see that I say something and it doesn't make sense? Ask for my data. Ask me where I got it. If you see another video and they say something that doesn't necessarily seem to match history, ask them, where's your data? How did you come to this conclusion? If they tell you, well, I've seen X, Y, Z, well, that's one person. Can they show you data from somewhere else? Can we get something? Now, I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a nice day, and have a nice day. And if you really want to help support the channel, please consider buying the Serious on the Rarest Things or Off the Rails. If you do own it and you've read it, and you can give a review, please do. And have a nice day.